I'm O.G Veteran, and I'll be your guide to a different side of American pride. Welcome back, and I'm your host, O.G Veteran. You know, I try to say a prayer to myself before I do these podcasts and these snippets. And what I say is, let God go in first. So when I come into the studio, I want to make sure that I don't come in here from a place of anger, because God knows we got enough of that going on. But we have some serious things happening in this country. And one I'd like to discuss is about racism. And I know people say, oh, just don't talk about it. You know, very successful people. One of the people I admire the most, Morgan Freeman, he says that his solution is just don't talk about it. He says the solution for America is just not to talk about racism. But it's kind of hard not to when you see the results of racism in the country. So what are the results of racism in the country? Well, we have a country to where we have over 8 million people in the judicial system, locked up in the judicial system, in prisons. And most of those are black people. Even though we account for less than 15% of the total population, we account for 80% of the people on the judicial system, in the judicial system, in prisons, etc. Now, we can try to throw blame and throw salt at whoever we want, but as a whole, we got to accept this because, once again, it's the embracing of a culture. And we have to understand, how did this happen? Well, the nigger culture is real. And even though I didn't grow up in the nigger culture, and what I mean by that is that I didn't grow up in a time to where the nigger culture was prevalent, to where it had fused into our pop culture. But I raised children in it. My children are now in their 40s. And the kids that I worked with in a nonprofit world and working with neighborhood kids, they're in between their 40s and 50s. So I see the effects of the country as a whole. I mean, when you have people, when you think about that, are now 40 and 50 years old that grew up in the nigger culture, it can't help but influence the thinking of our country and where we are today. Somebody once asked me, they said, what do you think is the worst effect of racism? You know, that it's horrible that somebody hates you just because of the color of your skin. Horrible somebody hates you because you're different. And I thought about it and I said, you know, in my opinion, the most detrimental part of racism is not that somebody might hate me because of the color of my skin, because I'm different than they are. Because hating something for being different, being afraid of something for being different, that's pretty universal. And it could be all kinds of differences. It can even be differences within the quote-unquote race, within the subculture. So anything that's different, it is nature to suspect and be cautious of things that are different. But the worst effect of racism is not that somebody hates me because I'm different. The worst effect of racism is when it can get me to hate myself because I'm different than they are. These are the challenges that racism has created, is that it creates a self-perpetuating hatred, a self-hatred that just keeps going on and on. So niggas are a problem in this country. And we need to understand that they're a problem and they've been there for a while. And it's not going away until we address really what it's all about. Niggas are a product of being former slaves. They're a product of former slaves being in an environment to where they were around and taught to assimilate to the same culture of redneck and cracker culture, but just a black version of it. So the same level of ignorant thinking that encompasses redneck and cracker culture is the same ignorant thinking that encompasses the nigger culture, except for it's just different people of different colors. The difference is that if a white person decides, I want to leave cracker culture behind, if a white person decides, I want to leave that redneck culture behind and become an articulate, intelligent, well-spoken white person, then they have a place in this society that is elevated, that is accepting. But if a black person who's been living in nigger culture, that's been involved in nigger culture, that's been embracing nigger culture, decides they want to let it go, the challenge is that even in letting it go, you're still black. And that color still bars a lot of people from moving forward and blocks a lot of people from moving forward. And what's even worse about it, what's the worst aspect of it, is that there's still somebody trying to pull you back in to nigger culture, even as you work so hard to get out of it. We are a product, most black people in this country, and don't get me wrong, not all black people in this country came from the industrial slave aspects of this country, but most of us did. And because of that, we have to understand that when Civil War ended and Reconstruction started, the idea was to get black people that were now free, former slaves, to give them an opportunity to educate and to do better. And yes, after Reconstruction, there became this rise. There became black townships. There became so much. And we have to understand that the Republicans were the ones doing it. The Republican Party was the one doing it. It wasn't the Democratic Party. But as we started to move up, as blacks and former slaves and black people started to move up and let go of that nigger culture, there became a jealousy and enragement from the cracker culture. There became jealousy and rage from the redneck culture. And there is documented, if you can see the documentation, as the black culture starts to rise and starts to become cohesive, the anti-black culture starts to rise. The Ku Klux Klan rose and rose and rose. And when Reconstruction and when the troops were pulled out of the South after the Civil War, at first they were down there and they were protecting the rights of these newly freed slaves. And as they were protecting the rights, there became safety and the ability to become something other than niggas. But the rednecks hated that, hated it with a passion. And the election that put the Democrats back in some power, they didn't take the presidential election, but they did get some power. But there was some leverage, and they pulled the troops out of the South, the same troops that were protecting the former slaves. And the Ku Klux Klan and the white supremacists came in with a vengeance to destroy everything, stomping on it, burning it. So yes, I've had a lot of conversations with white people, and you'll see it out there on the internet. And I have white friends that, that's like, well, we don't understand how come blacks were doing so much better before. Even in the 40s and 50s, post-World War II, we started to come up. And even before that, in the early 1900s, the same thing happened. Started to come up again, townships. The Ku Klux Klan rose, the white supremacy rose, stomped it out again. And this has been a pattern. Now, take in that, in and of itself, and create a program designed by the Democrats, not the Republicans, but take a program that was designed to say, hey, we'll keep you on America's tit. I know that's crude, but that's basically what it is. We'll keep you on America's tit. And we're going to work with a new system of welfare. Now, it wasn't invented just for black people. It was invented because the nation was in a hard-hit way. But there became this idea that, let's make these people dependent on us. Make them dependent. Give them enough to keep them alive, but not so much that they can move forward. And keep the black man out of the world, out of the household of raising. Okay? These are facts that are out there. They're documented. I'm not telling you probably anything you didn't know. We have come a long way in this country. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, everybody here is racist and all white people here are racist, because you're not. And I'm not here to point my finger at you and tell you, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist. If you're racist, you know who you are. I'd like to see less of this idea, though, that the way to help the black man in this country, the black people in this country, is through keeping the tit in the mouth. I'd like to get away from this whole idea that keeping somebody dependent is the way to help them. I have a friend of mine. She's a white liberal from back east. And she told me one day, she said, I feel so bad for what my people have done to black people. I feel so bad for what white people have done to black people. I feel so bad. And I asked her, why do you want to identify with those white people that were oppressive to black people? Why do you want to identify? I said, why don't you instead think about identifying with the hundreds of thousands of white people that died to end slavery, to abolish slavery? If it was only on blacks to have abolished slavery in this country, it would not have happened. Black people have never made anything, number one, in and of it by itself. Even music, arts, culture, etc., it's always been the embracing of the whole country, and especially the white people in this country, to make something move up. So when soul movement came big and rock and roll became big, it wasn't just blacks listening to it, even though blacks were the inventors of it. Jazz, it wasn't just the embracing of jazz by black people, even though blacks were the inventor of it. Hip-hop, rap, it wasn't the embracing of these cultures, of this music, of this swagger. It wasn't just the embracing by black people, it was the embracing by white people also, and that's what made it go worldwide. The nigger culture and America, America seems to have a love-hate relationship with the nigger culture. And I understand love-hate relationships because, God, I love this country. I love this country. But I'm still a black man in America. And I'm not a black man who's blind to what has gone on here in the past and what still permeates parts of our culture and parts of our country. I think it's better. Hell yes, I think it's better. There is not one position that in this country that has not been held by a black man or a woman, or a black man or a woman of color, or a woman of color or a man of color. Not one. So obviously we have come a long way. And we still have some ways to go. We're not out of the water yet, because the challenge with hate is that it's easy for it to come back up to the surface. It can just go like below the surface and just lie there and wait for opportunities to pop its head back up, to pop the ugly head of hate back up. But always remember, it starts with self-hate. The self-hatred is really what hurts us the most. See, self-hatred tells us that we don't want to identify or even help anything that looks remotely like us. Self-hatred becomes like a bomb, and we all know that when a bomb goes off, a suicide bomber, when that bomb goes off, yes, it does kill the bomber. It's meant to kill the bomber also. But more than anything, it's meant to destroy those that are closest and around it. That is the way it's meant. So when something destroys itself and you're in the proximity, there's a good chance you're going to get killed or hurt also by it. And that's what's happening in this country when we talk about this culture of ignorance that has been prevailing. We are a wonderful country. We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. But we have opportunity here when we quit blaming somebody for something because of their color. When we quit blaming black people for a naked culture that does not exist where other black people exist. I mean, we have black people all over the world. People coming here from Jamaica, the islands, etc., coming from Africa, they don't embrace the naked culture. And it's documented. They do so well here. They come here with love in their hearts for this country because they're looking for opportunity that they did not have where they were. And they don't fall into it. But they have their own culture. They're able to hang on to the culture that they brought with them. The challenge with nigga culture is that if you beat somebody's original culture out of them or breed it out of them to where they're never exposed to it, I mean, you're talking multi-generational slaves, then they never even got to know their distant culture. They never even got to know it. So they're going to embrace the culture that is closest to them. That was the redneck culture. That's what they were surrounded by, the redneck culture. And that's what they were oppressed by, was the redneck culture. The white liberal movement that is so strong in this country, that wants to make everybody a victim, well, you can't do that and help the country. People have to take responsibility for their own personal actions. The challenge is that education, when denied, makes it more difficult to know what your choices are. Now, that being said, I understand that the schools in the inner city have historically been challenged. No books, the worst teachers that don't care, and when the teachers do care, they get chewed up by the system anyways. And they're dealing with nigga culture in the school itself. You're dealing with that culture that says, oh man, what the fuck you doing? Niggas don't read. You ain't got to go to school. Shit, come out here and slang this rock, nigga. When you have that type of culture permeating, it's hard to get away from it. But we live in an age of artificial intelligence and the internet. And there are free phones available now in the inner city. I see them all the time, little booths set up. Get yourself a phone for free. So that being said, information and knowledge is available to anybody that wants it. The challenge is that if you come from a culture that doesn't want to embrace education, and I'm talking about education just in the point of educating oneself. You know, Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich, teaches that education comes from educo, to draw out, to make better, to draw this knowledge out. So education, I'm not necessarily talking anymore about formalized education, because anything taught at the finest schools in the country, finest schools in the world, you can get it on the internet. It is now available. But if you have a culture, and if you embrace a culture that says, I would rather watch videos and laugh and be entertained than to educate, then it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter how much information is available. Because if your culture doesn't embrace it, then it's like it never even existed. So we have a divide starting to happen in the world as a whole. And it's a divide not so much about cultural and color, but it's a divide of intelligence and stupidity. The challenge is that stupidity is like bottom. That's rock bottom. That's dirt. That's ground. And at one time, somebody who was considered to be smart wasn't much smarter than somebody who was stupid. You know, he invented the wheel. He's smart. I'm going to stay with Og. So it was one of those situations to where the separation between stupidity and intelligence just wasn't that great. But with every generation, it's getting greater and greater because intelligence, the level of intelligence is higher and higher and higher. You young people today, you're better than we are. You're smarter than we are. You're faster than we are. You're bigger than we are. You're better than we are in every way, and you're supposed to be. That is the ones of you that are taking advantage of everything that's being offered. So the ones of you that want to get better and want to be better than the generation before, you're better. You can see it in sports. You can see it in education. You can see it in the things that are being invented, created, made on a scientific level as well as an artistic level. You can see it in so many ways. You're better than we are. The challenge is though, you're stupid are still stupid. And a lot of times the stupid holler the loudest. They have the biggest mouths, the stupid people. And the idea of following in and behind stupid people is going to make your world a lot harder. I mean, I'm an OG. I don't have much time left on this earth. I don't know what the world has in store. I do know that every generation has said, I don't want to live today. This has gotten too crazy. These people, what's going to happen? The whole world's going to hell in a handbasket. Well, that's been said for hundreds and hundreds of years. But you do have your own challenges in front of you. And your biggest challenges are not going to be technology. Your biggest challenges are whether you can stay together and work together in order to continue to have the things that this country and so many countries like us have and want to continue moving forward. If you can work together as a country, you can do it. God bless you, young people. I believe in you. I really do. I believe that us old-timers, we can't really understand how you think and how your brains work, but I believe in you. I know you're going to be okay, and I know you're going to continue to work to fix the things that are problematic in this country. Hey, this is O.G Vet. Remember, we need both the left and the right to soar like